Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome back to my channel. Today it's a very important and interesting topic, which is payment processing and accounts payable. This video is going to be little lengthy and elaborative because of the longer content which is available in the payment process. Uh, if you want to access the ebook, there is a link available in the video description. You can go and access. Now let's begin the journey of payment process. Now, what is that we are going to cover in this video? It's overview of payment process, which means what is the basic processes in the payment process. What are the types of payments in AP? What do you mean by payment scheduling? What are the different payment methods? And what are the approval workflows? How does the bank file generation and integration process works? What is a payment reconciliation? What is remittance advice and vendor communication? We'll also talk about payments, holds, and rejections. And like we talk in all our videos, we will also talk about controls and compliance. Then, one thing that you always wait in my video is the frequently asked questions. We'll also talk about some of the questions that you can expect in the interview from this section of the training. So, a quick introduction. Payment processing is a final and critical step in AP cycle. It involves disbursement of approved funds to vendors after thorough validation of invoice and matching processes, which means this is an final step of the AP process where the processed invoice is pulled up for payment and the final payment is executed to the vendor or the receiver. Now let's talk about what are the overviews and steps involved in the payment processes. First is invoice approved and due for payment, which means if you remember in the previous videos we talked about invoice processing, and once the invoice is processed, it is approved for payment and due for payment. Then second thing is payment batch selection based on the due and cash flow. I'll explain this little bit in detail. For example, there is an invoice which you received with an invoice date 1st of July with a 30-day payment term. The invoice is ideally due on 30th of July. When you are making a payment selection on 30th of July, then this batch or this list of invoices are pulled for payments. So we'll talk little in detail when we go into the next slides. Payment initiated, approved, and sent for bank, which means you validated everything. The payment is initiated, it is approved internally, and then once it is internally approved, it is sent to bank for payments. Once it is sent to bank for payments, a final confirmation and remittance advice is issued, which means we'll talk about these four steps once again. You have list of invoices which are approved and due. A payment batch is selected based on the due date or based on the amount of cash which is available in your bank. Based on the selection, a payment is initiated, it is approved internally and then sent to bank. Once it is sent to bank, then there is a payment confirmation, which means you have funds, everything is fine, it got executed. Once the payment is executed, you get a confirmation from bank, and after the payment is executed, you also have a remittance that is issued. Now let's talk about what are the types of payments which are available in the AP processes. One is vendor payments and vendor payments for the invoices for both PO and non-PO, which means there's a service that you have taken or there are goods that you have purchased. It has gone through a two-way or a three-way invoice matching process, and then these invoices are selected for payments. Then the second type of payment you have is employee reimbursement. What is employee reimbursement? I will make a detailed video, but I will talk now in a short uh, basic information that I can give it to you. Employee reimbursement are basically some of the expenses that employee uh, spends on behalf of the company. For example, he is on a business travel, he spends for his hotel, he spends for his meal, he spends for his transportation. Once the employee is back from the business tour, he claims those expenses And some of the other expenses in employee reimbursements are the internet and mobile expenses. There are some organization which allows employees to claim the internet and also claim their mobile expenses. So these are some of the types of employees reimbursements. And there are some advance payments also. Why do we make advance payments? Advance payments can typically occur in case you are starting a project, or you are starting a construction, or you are starting a facility, or you're taking some services, and then the service provider expect you to make them payment in advance depending on the contract. For example, there is a 1 year contract for a facility that you are building. The contractor expects you to pay 20% or 30% in advance before he starts the work. So it depends on the contract. So these are some of the reasons why you make advance payments. And you will also have some urgent payments or one time vendor payments. What are the common one time and urgent one time vendor payments is? Now, for example, there is a disaster in your city, and your organization decides to release some funds for the relief of the society. That is one way where uh, the the organization make uh, the urgent payments. I'll give you one example. The other example is where uh, there's a power shed in your organization because of a heavy rain, and then you have to get an inverter or a generator to run the office. So these payments also go through the urgent or one time vendor payments. Now let's see what are payment scheduling. The bigger organization does not usually make payments every day. Every day, making payments for multiple invoices or huge set of invoices is going to be a tedious and complex job. So what most of the bigger organization do is they have a weekly or a bi-weekly payment runs. Some organization also have a monthly payment run. So what happens is, for example, it's a Monday uh, is your payment run. All the invoices that are due last week until Friday or picked up for payments on Monday. This allows a lot of companies to one reduce the workload of making the payments daily, also manage their cash flow efficiently. The other way of scheduling payments is based on the payment terms. For example, the invoices comes with a 30-day or a net 60-day payment terms. You wanted to make payments based on this schedule. You can also prepare the schedule accordingly. Like every day, you pull out the statement or ledger that has list of invoices that are due based on net 30 or net 60-day payment terms, and you execute payments based on these payment terms and prioritize by due date and discount terms. You can also schedule your payments based on the due dates. You can run the batches accordingly. And what is the discount terms here? There are a lot of vendors who provides you discounts for making early payments. I will give you one example. If you have an invoice with a 30-day payment term, but your agreement with the vendor says that, hey, if you pay my invoices in 50 days, you can take a 1% or 2% discount. So based on these discounts, you can also prioritize your payments even though the invoice is due on uh, due with net 30-day terms. uh, you can still pay it in advance because you are getting a 1% discount. This primarily depends on your cash flow availability of your organization. Now in this slide we will talk about what are the different types of payment methods which are available in the industry. The first and simplest way is bank transfer, which is through ACH, NEFT, and SEFNA. This is a simple bank transfer uh, that we do. The other is wire payments. What is wire payments? What is ACH? What is NEFT? It's a detailed and lengthy topic. I can create a separate video on it. But for now, if you get a question in the interview, tell me different types of payment methods. You can talk about first is bank transfer, ACH, NEFT, and there are wire payments. There are also check payments. There are also virtual credit card payments, and then finally digital wallet payments for very small or medium set of vendors. Now let's understand what is the payment approval workflow. Usually the multi-tier approval process is integrated with most of the large organization. When I say multi-layer, it requires multiple levels of approval based on the payment example. For example, if it is a $10,000 payment, maybe if you require two approvals versus $1 million payment that you are making, it will require five levels of approvals, right? So one person uh, who's approving, he most of the times he cannot be a single approver. So in every case, the approver depends on, or the number of approvals required are depends on the value of the amount that you are making the payment for. And the second is segregation of duties between initiator and approver. This is one topic that I covered in my previous video also, where it is very important that the person who is initiating should never be the approver. This is uh, very important to avoid fraud in the organization. For example, I am one person who process the invoices, who create the vendors, who process the invoices, who initiate the payments, and who can also approve the payment, which means I have full control over getting an invoice, creating a vendor, and then initiating processing the invoice, and then initiating payment and also approving, which means I have full control over making a fraud. And then the final step here is digital signature and token authentication for approvals. A lot of banks have digital signature authentication process where manually the approver does not have to uh, either sign a physical form, or you don't have to go to banks for approvals. There is a blank bank platform where you uh, go and log in with the approver credentials, and then you also have tokenized password system where once you log in you get a password, uh, which is similar to an OTP process where you log into a bank. If you have to approve a payment, there is a token OTP that is received, and based on which the approvals are executed. Now let's talk about what is a bank file generation and integration. So nowadays, to simplify the processes, there is no physical process involved of you creating the file in Excel and then emailing it to bank validating it. These processes are old. Nowadays, there is a integration between bank platforms and our ERP platforms, where the process begins from the person who is executing the payment. He creates a payment file in XML, TXT, or CST format generated from the ERP system. For example, if you are using SAP, you can run multiple queries within SAP to extract the bank file. So with whatever parameters you give, for example, you can give the invoices that are due as on today. You can say the invoices that are uh, due in minus 15 days, or the list of non-PO payments. You can put multiple parameters based on which you can extract the file from the SAP. So once you extract the file from the SAP, you do your basic validation. After your basic validation, upload to the bank portal and integrated via host to host system. So like I said before, there is a connection between our ERP system and the bank. Then once you upload the uh, file in the bank portal, the integration automatically works. Once it is integrated or the file is successfully uploaded, bank confirms transaction successful or failure. So I'll explain it to you once again. The first step is you download the file from your ERP system based on whatever parameters you want to add it. Then once you have the file, you do your basic validation, and the file is uploaded to bank portal, or there is an integration between your system and bank system where the information can automatically pass. And then once this is successfully executed, bank confirms the transaction and successful or failure. Now we will also talk about what is a payment reconciliation process, which is very, very important. Right? Confirm payment, confirm paid invoices versus bank statement, uh, which means you have to confirm the list of invoices that you paid versus what is listed in the bank statement. For example, you paid $10,000 worth invoices. You should also see that $10,000 worth deduction in your bank statement. And then next step is match payment references and dates. So you should also match the payment references which is provided by the bank to the payments that you initiated. Investigate mismatch or rejections. There are some times where you upload 10 invoices to be paid, but due to a rejection only 9 invoices got paid. So the amount deducted from bank will also be lesser than what you wanted to pay. So it is very important to perform the reconciliation for the invoices that did not get paid or it got rejected. Some of the primary reason for rejections are vendors having incorrect bank details. Like when you set up a vendor, you had a bank details mentioned for those vendors, but during the course of last couple of months, weeks, there is a change in the bank details of the vendor, but vendor did not communicate to you, or he communicated that to somebody, but that information did not pass through you. So the vendor's bank is closed, and they are not receiving any payments. So in the case you are sending a payment to a bank account which is already closed, and the payment does not go through. So once the uh, rejection file or list is made, you have to work backwards to contact the vendor and make sure to understand what are the reasons for rejection and action it accordingly. So the payments team job actually does not end as soon as the payment is successfully executed. There is a final step which is involved, that is emailing or communicating vendor about the list of invoices that you paid. So we'll talk about step by step what are the processes that we need to follow. Email or postal communication of remittance, which means it is very important for you to uh, inform the vendor what set of invoices you paid. And then second step is the remittance should contain invoice reference, payment date, and payment amount, which will help vendors match and close their accounts. I will give you simple example where, for example, if you have paid 10 invoices for one vendor, and if you worth 10,000, but if you don't send the remittance to the vendor, it is very difficult for vendor to understand for which invoices you made the payment for. So if you don't communicate this information, or if you don't share the remittance in advance, you should expect a email or a call from vendor asking you to provide the remittance so that they will be able to match the invoices that you paid. So it is very important to avoid additional workload. So as soon as the payments are successfully executed, one of the important step is to share the remittance to the vendor. In most of the cases, this information is provided automatically to vendors by bank, but in some cases where the vendor contacts are not properly updated, for example, there is an email address change, so the email goes to the old person, the actual person uh, who's matching the payments in the AR system does not get the information. So there are it will add additional and unnecessary workload if you don't execute this process efficiently. Now in this slide we'll talk about payments, holds, and rejection. uh, Payments on hold due to dispute or mismatching documents. Uh, this example we spoke in our non-PO process, where you get an invoice, it has a dispute. Though the invoice is processed, it is kept on hold until further clarification. Or there is a document that is received which is mismatched, and then basis which you have placed the invoice on hold, and you will not be able to make the payment for it. Rejected payments due to invalid bank details. Like I spoke in my previous slide, there are multiple reasons because of which the payments get rejected. So one of the important step is to work on the rejected payments due to invalid bank details or due to multiple other reasons. And then final step is resolution tracked and reinitiated, which means uh, you have to understand the reason why the payment is rejected. And then once you understand the reason, for example, if the bank is closed or the bank is incorrect from the vendor side, so you contact the vendor, ask them to provide the new bank details. Once you have new bank details, that information goes to the vendor master team. The vendor master team updates the correct information in bank. Once the information is updated correctly, it is notified to you that hey, there's a change in the vendor bank details, it is now updated, you can reinitiate the invoice process. Like there are multiple other reasons why the invoice gets rejected, and then one of the important process in AP payments team is to resolve the rejections. Now let's talk about what are the controls and compliance in the AP processes. SOX and internal controls adherence is very very important portion of the payment process. So there are SOX guidelines which you definitely need to follow, and internally also every organization has control system in place. So it is very important for us to follow those controls. Dual authorization for high value payments, like I spoke sometime before in my previous video. The authorization should be at multiple levels depending on the value. The approval limits also should be set for the amount of payments that you are making. And then payment audit logs and record retention. So it is very important that you maintain the logs of payment audits, and then whatever records that you have related to payments. So it is very very important to retain this information for your audits and compliance purposes. Now, what are some of the best practices in the payment process to avoid duplication or to avoid multiple payments? So, first thing is perform mock runs before live payments. Uh, what is a mock run? Mock run is just uh, you perform a test payment run before a final payment is run. Which means based on this mock run, you will understand if there are some errors, you will understand if there are some fraudulent invoices or duplicate invoices before you execute the payment. Maintain payment calendar, which means you will have to mark your calendar accordingly so that you understand when are the payment schedules available. Communicate early vendor with the delays in case you get into any delays. For example, on Monday you wanted to make payments, but there is a flaw or problem in your ERP system or at the bank system because of which you are not able to make the payment. So it is very important to communicate to the vendors about the delay so that uh, the vendor and our relationship does not get hampered. And always use payment terms to optimize working capital. Like I said, it is while it is important to make the payments on time, it is also important not to make the payments before time. So it is very important that you make the payment only when the invoices are due, with exception cases where you get a discount for making the early payments. Now, most important part of the training is the frequently asked interview questions. Uh, this is primarily focusing on payments, holds, and rejections. So one of the first question that I have put here is, how can I reduce payment errors? So if you are somebody who's getting interview for the payment process, so this is one of the common question that you can expect. The response is automated payment generation and enforce validation, which means you do minimum inputs and then everything should be automated, which means the automated system has an easy workflow. Also, it has validations in place. Now, the other question that you can expect is, what is a remittance advice? So, in like I explained before, a document sent to vendor listing the invoices being paid. So, which is one of the important process after you make a payment. It is very very important for us to let the vendor know what are the payments that we made for. And then the other question that you can expect is, can urgent payments be handled separately? Uh, so yes, using a separate manual process with higher scrutiny. Uh, Like if there is an urgent payment that you have to make because of multiple reasons, there's a urgent payment that you need to do. Yes, there is a separate manual process available in most of the organizations where you can execute a separate manual process which is different from your daily schedule process. The final conclusion of the payment process. Timely and accurate payment processing strengthens vendor relationship, ensure finance and maintain operational efficiency. Automation workflow controls to clear and key to manage this step is effectively. Thank you so much for watching my videos till now. Uh, Please subscribe for more videos. If you need more information, there is an email ID that is mentioned here. You can contact me through my email ID. And if you have any questions, you can also uh, send me a message from this video. I will try to answer you as early as I can. Thank you so much. All of you have a very good day.